We heard Mr. Sankalp a few moments back. He was talking about sustainable business growth. And he mentioned a strategy, channel strategy. Taking a cue from there, our next speaker, Mr. Aveek Roy, will be sharing his knowledge on frontiers in channel management, boost channel effectiveness to drive sales growth. Mr. Aveek Roy is the Regional Director, Asia Pacific, Middle East, Africa for Sangoma. Has a deep knowledge and expertise in channel strategy. He's expert in strategic planning, revenue modeling, product marketing, and management. He has also got expertise in developing a total go-to-market strategy with complete revenue focus. So, Mr. Aveek Roy for you. Can I have a round of applause for Mr. Aveek Roy, please? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think I see a little bit of interest. There's a little bit of movement around, so hopefully people are not sleeping. And it becomes a little hard when you are in between slots where you land up in a position where you need to keep the audience awake, right? So can everybody hear me, I hope, right? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to talk today about channel management. Now, the biggest thing that everybody has is how to sell. And as in the previous sessions, most of you are from the region of companies or companies which have like between 1 to 50 crores sort of revenue. So the most important part is to sell effectively and to address, not to spend too much in selling. So one of the best ways is to have the proper channel to be in space. Many of you would not have heard of the company from which I come from. It's called Sangoma Technologies. So a question for you, does anybody of you know what the meaning of Sangoma is? Any idea of which language this word belongs to? No, not India. Not Canadian has, I think, English and French. Sorry? Not Chinese. Somebody said African? Okay, Swahili, correct. So Swahili. So in Swahili, it actually means witch doctor. So witch doctor is basically somebody who throws bones at you, which in Indian we call tantric. Okay? So basically, I belong to a company which does cloud services, which does hardware, which does a lot of things. So, so for us, channel is very, very, very important. So just to give you a background of where I'm coming from, so which will make, things much more easier for us to talk about. So the most important point before deciding about, about how and what to do is to understand consumer behavior. So if we look at things, about the consumer behavior part, so everything a person or a company needs or buys depends on what the business needs, what the individual needs, and what at the end of the day your customer needs. So the customer needs are based on multiple layers of thoughts. So if you look at it, whether it is the product that he's looking at, the services that he's looking at, the region which he belongs to, the type of work or the type of enterprise or the market that they're catering to. So all of these things together land up in putting forward what sort of channel method or what are the types of ways in which you are selling to the customer. And how you sell to the customer, that is the most important point, because you can actually do things effectively or do things totally ineffectively. If you adopt strategies which are not in the right sense of things, you could make a big company go down, while on the other hand, if you do things much more effectively, you could make smaller companies spread across the world and also save cost on how you sell. Previously, in previous times, when we were talking about, standard channels, there were the manufacturer used to sell to distributors who were basically people who used to buy and stock products, and they used to move boxes. They used to sell to resellers or system integrators or service partners who used to actually, be the via media in terms of consolidating, in various regional levels, and then providing services and products to the end customers, and then it was the end customer. Then we also had standard, the service model wherein there used to be the OEM or a big company like an Apple, Google, Oracle, or whatsoever it is, who used to develop some sort of software or service, and then you used to have service partners who used to provide the services to the end customers. But now, the channel mentality has changed because there is one thing which is www. Anything and everything is available on the web. So whether you are looking for a refrigerator, whether you are looking for an IT system, whether you're looking for hiring a cab, whether you're looking even for having a turnkey solution for your factory, everything is available on the web. So where does this complete channel go? The channel now has become omnipresent. So there is no longer, it's very difficult to maintain a distinction between, who is going to be a distributor, whether he's going to sell to another partner, whether he's selling to the end customer, whoever it is. And today's world, the biggest thing is that everybody wants to be on the web, and it is mandatory for them to be there online. So therefore, from a customer perspective, the customer can find multiple layers of availability of people, and as he reaches up the chain, thanks to the Amazons and thanks to people like Google, for that matter, all the marketplaces available. So for the same product, you will have multiple pricing, you will have multiple levels and tiers of people who would be selling the same product. And hence, the customer is obviously of benefit, but then all the interim layers, they get cut on. So the decision which the customer takes, if it is only dependent on price, may land him up to a distributor who would just provide him the box but no service. Or it might land him to another end customer who is trying to sell or resell a product just for the sake of reselling it. So the question is very important to understand from a selling perspective for companies, which channels do they adopt? Because it could be catastrophic, because if you adopt the wrong set of channels for providing your products, they could land you into big problems. So the major, the reasons of how and what influences your channel decision depends on the selection of the product, the type of product that you have. So whether it is a hardware product which requires inventory, whether it is a pure software-oriented product where doing sales returns or doing changes to it becomes very easy. So that is one of the major factors in which how you define which sort of channel do you adopt. Also, a channel is very important because it actually provides multiple products which are functioning at the same level. So therefore, for example, if you have competitive products being catered to by the same channel, then it also becomes a difficult thing from a seller's perspective or an OEM's perspective of how to limit the channel to sort of not provide products which are competitive. Third is the need perception of the customer. The channel plays a major role in how does he look at the need perspective. So for example, if a person comes up and looks for a particular commodity, but then if you are able to sell him a higher price product which can add some more features for which he doesn't even have a need, it completely depends upon the front end channel which is trying to sell the product of whether he can convince the customer for the same. Then a channel also depends upon increasing the stickiness on the products and services. So how the whole experience of buying something from a channel, and whether that particular customer is going to come back to him and buy it, that depends upon how well the channel knows about the product and how well the channel actually sells through to them. What happens today is when we are in a diverse environment where you have the web, which is one sort of environment where everything is available, and you have the traditional channel, there is a big conflict between both of these things together. So if you do not choose your channel properly, what you lead up to is that everybody is selling to everybody. And for small companies, that is the biggest problem. Because if you are too less sold or if you are too highly sold, both are the things which are not the best things to have. Because you would either erode the brand or you would make your brand a commodity. And hence you are not being able to get the value that your brand deserves. So that has a big reason of why you should have the right channel strategy in place. Second, you will have no pricing control. So whensoever you do not segregate the channel in a right way, and if everybody starts selling to everybody, it's a race down to the Marina Trench. You'll end up in eroding the price in a much quicker and faster manner, such that no one gets the benefit except the end customer, who can get a very good product at a very low price. And nobody else is rewarded in the whole process. The brand value gets eroded because you might have a very good product, but then what happens is that the value that the product is associated with is quite less, and hence the perception that the brand is a common brand or a below at par value brand becomes very common. So these are very important questions when you are a new company starting to grow. You want to not just have price as the only competing point. And this also has to be made very clear to the channel that it is not price on which you only play. You have to have the necessary needs met, and the value of the product should be at par with what it is available for in the market. Once this cutthroat thing happens with no segregation of the channel, there is a very big decrease in the margin which is available in the channel. Now again, what happens is, when there's a decrease in the margin, nobody makes a benefit. When the channel doesn't get the money, they don't want to sell your product. They will start pushing something else, but they have more margin. Hence, your product gradually sees a spike because there are too many people who are actually selling your product. Gradually, as the margins shrink, people start dropping off, and then you are left with nobody who is interested in the product. And at the end of the day, your brand has taken a toll. So that becomes a very important fact, because you should have sufficient enough margin in the channel which could drive them. If nobody, I think all of us here are interested in making money, right? If nobody makes money in the process, then at the end, it's a very bad situation to be, and nothing happens except that your brand goes for a toss. Nowadays, with all these channels being, now there being no traditional channels who are following a distribution-oriented model or a distribution selling to a reseller and stuff like that, there's a huge lot of channel conflict which evolves. The channel conflict which evolves primarily is because with e-presence, there are no geographical boundaries. So you cannot restrict people from selling at a particular world. So therefore, for example, you would have different pricing for different geographies, but then you will find the product being sold at a different location. We know that China and India are among the most competitive geographies in the world. So pricing that many of us Western companies do for these markets are very competitive. But then you'll end up in people buying from here and selling that in Europe or in North America for the same reason. And there's no way you can find it out, because when you find out, it's mostly when the product has already been used for a long period of time and there is a service issue. And at that point of time, it becomes a problem, because if you do not service that customer, you have an unhappy customer who has got the product at the lowest price and has possibly not paid for anything known as support, but then we as a OEM or as the manufacturer would land up in supporting that customer. So this becomes a very important point of making channel conflict. Products which are sold to the channel, none of the channels maintain sanctity, so that everybody is trying to cut everybody else. Now, what that means is a distributor, for example, lands up in selling to the end customer. A partner, channel partner also sells to the end customer. There is a big conflict between whose pricing is higher, whose pricing is lower, why is it supposed to sell, and your whole channel strategy goes for a toss, and the most important beating is taken by the brand or the product, because the customer thinks that the manufacturer of the product is making a lot of money because he can get one product at, let's say, 100 rupees, and the same product he can get for 75 rupees for the same thing from two different partners. So that if there's so much of margin in between, then people are making a lot of money. So therefore, he thinks that the value for the product is not there. And in order to complicate all this, many of the OEMs, which they feel is, after experimenting through all this channel strategy, they decide to go direct. So therefore, what they do is, they start their own portals, they start their own web spaces where they can sell directly, and that leads to the end of the story. So many of the big companies which today, or rather I would say smaller companies today, which are doing good business, are people who have stuck to particular specific, modes, wherein they have not gone through a hybrid model. When you are selling a product, which is a hardware-oriented product, what you need to look at is, you should follow either a direct model, which is business, to the consumer. The consumer might be the end customer, might be the business, might be whosoever, but there should not be a hybrid model, wherein some part you are selling directly, some part you are selling through the channel. That is something which is set up for failure. If you are using a traditional structure, which is a distribution-oriented model, you should follow the distribution model, but then do not start selling directly to the end customer. You should have some strict pricing controls, wherein the pricing and the discounting mechanism is known to everybody, so that there is no conflict, or even the customer knows that if he's buying from a reseller, he is buying it because of the service that is associated with it, and not just because of the product price. If he's buying from a distributor, he's just buying the box, and he will not get the service, and that's why he's paying less for it. So pricing control has to be essential. Online resellers' pricing should be fixed. So we should always look at that online resellers should never be given the same type of discounting which is available to others, because they do not neither carry back-end stock. Online resellers and partners should not be put at par with standard distribution products, because they land up in sort of making a big mess, wherein the pricing and the product pricing goes for a toss, and then you do not even know the source of the product which you are buying, the authenticity and stuff in many cases, which leads to more complications. Also, the skill enablement of the various channels need to be done based on their requirements. So whether it's a distributor, whether it is a reseller, whether it is a service partner, they should be skill enabled, not at the same level. You should restrict the skill training based on the role that they play in the whole channel structure. So that is again important. And I think it is very important for smaller companies to have and understand an effective channel management strategy. Otherwise, the product might be very good, but it would definitely land up of being either undersold or oversold, which in both cases would become a problem with the company. The last is, how do we make channels effective? Train them. One, more importantly, train them on the process, not on the product. Product training goes by default, but then train them on how to use the processes in the right manner. Product, yes, but train them to the level at which they're supposed to fulfill those products. So for example, a service partner should be trained at the highest level, while a distributor needs to be trained at just understanding the products which he moves, which is more as a box pushing initiative rather than a product or a product technical initiative. Train the people so that they have their internal trainers who can train further people down, and it's not always dependent on your company to sort of refresh the trainings time and again. Manage, define the territories very clearly so that there is no ambiguity, number one. Number two, make sure that you have models in place which restrict those territories and which keep the people within those territories. There should be penalties associated so that there is some punitive action which can be taken against channels who run amok. Because actually, it is good for you to have a stable channel relationship rather than just go and provide everything to everybody. Price adjustments needs to be done based on the different models and the modes of the channel so that people make money. That is most important, that you as a company have to take care that your channels are making money. If you do not take care of that, there will be nobody else who will be selling your product. Reward not just on sales numbers, but reward on the adherence of processes. You should reward your channels based on how close they are to the process, how strongly they follow it, and how ethical they are in their actual involvement of products. Maintain a proper discount percentages which are commonly and publicly known so that there is no dalliance in terms of adherence to whatsoever discounting or pricing you would want to give to the market. And the customer at the end of the day knows that why is he paying that extra dime to whom, because of what. I think that's all for me in the 20 minutes, whatsoever I had. But then the last word to say is, the product for a small company is the most essential thing. But on the technology side, while you make a very good product, you should always remember that the best thing to do is to have it sold through the right medium, at the right price, and the right way, because that is the only way that you can make money, which is by letting your channels make money. Thank you.
So can we have Mr. Vinod VC on stage to felicitate, sir? Please. So if you liked his session, please give him a better round of applause. Come on, a better fan of applause. He deserves that. Thank you, sir.